Welcome to Crusade Conversations, an interview series and resource for artists, curators, collectors, and people who care about the beautiful things in their world. I'm Jennifer Schwartz, your host and #1 crusader for art. I own a fine art photography gallery in Atlanta, the Jennifer Schwartz Gallery, and an online photo project called The 10. Crusade Conversations is an initiative of the Crusade for Collecting, a project born out of my passion for supporting art and artists. The Crusade's mission is to cultivate a new crop of art lovers, patrons, and collectors by encouraging people to engage with art in exciting and innovative ways. Today, we have Michael Schmelling joining us in the studio, which is a really exciting thing for me. All of the Crusade Conversations podcasts so far have been phone interviews, and so I'm making obsessive eye contact with Michael Schmelling right now, which is making him a little uncomfortable. But Michael is in Atlanta because we are doing a show of his work, Atlanta Hip Hop in the South, from that book that came out in 2010 through Chronicle. And before we get into all of that, Michael is an amazing photographer that I first met a couple of years ago now, maybe a year and a half. And I think that I first saw, it was after the book had come out and a couple of different people had pointed me to your work. But I think that you have a really interesting story because you work a lot in the commercial field, and fresh out of school at NYU, you started working in photo and have been able to do it full time, correct?
Yeah.
So tell us about that. How did you, I think a lot of people graduate with a degree in photography and then
don't do anything with it.
Well, just don't know what to do, how to kind of make that leap really quickly.
Yeah, I always wanted to shoot, and I was doing, I guess when I was in college, I was really convinced I was going to be a traditional photojournalist. And a lot of the work that I was doing was either documentary based or just straight photojournalism. And I started working for some city magazines when I was in college, and when I got out, I just didn't really see an assistant path being the right thing for a photojournalist. Most photojournalists don't have assistants, or and so I did a little bit of assisting, but I pretty much got out of school and started some projects on my own, and then started bringing my book to newspapers and places like the Associated Press, where I ended up working for a while.
Was it Shut Up Truth, that work?
That was later. I actually, when I was at NYU, right after I graduated, I got this, NYU offers a postgraduate fellowship in the photo department called the Rosenberg Award. And it's just it's a 1 year, it's a stipend for a project, and the only stipulation is that you have to go somewhere and do a project. It's a travel-based fellowship, and you go somewhere, you make some work, and then you come back and show it at this gallery at NYU a year later. And so I picked El Paso, Texas, a place I'd never been, and I just wanted to go someplace that was totally different from New York, and a place that was maybe going to be a little bit hard or isolating. So, and I wanted to go to a place that was kind of on the fringes, and so I went to El Paso, and I lived there for 8 months, and I worked on a project there, and it was all, at the time, like I said, I was really I went down there with the idea that I would do all these photojournalistic projects border issues and gangs, and I did a lot of that, but in the end I built this project that was much more around much more of an experiential open-ended documentary project about people in El Paso that I'd met, or things that were kind of tangential to this these ideas of photojournalism and some of the issues in El Paso. And I came back to New York, and I put that work in a portfolio. I had the show, and I had that work, and I had some work from college, and that was my first portfolio. It was basically that, and that's what I was trying to get work with, and that's when I started working for the Associated Press, and a little bit for the New York Times, and some of the local New York newspapers.
And then, but I feel like the work would you say the work is not traditionally what people put in their portfolios for assignment work typically? I mean, it's pretty... Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time, it definitely wasn't like a photojournalism portfolio, and I think the people that reacted to it, like, favorably kind of saw me as, like, I mean, there was this woman at the Associated Press that kind of took me in and gave me a lot of my first assignments, and I think she saw me as, like, that Associated Press has, like, a huge staff of, like, seasoned, like, great photographers, and I think she kind of saw me as, like, somebody who could do, like, the weirder photo, like, in a big story. So I would get sent out a lot on, like, you know, big stories, like, I think Giuliani was running for a second term around then, like, you know, like a story like that, and there would be, you know, like a big election story or something, and there would be, like, a staff photographer, and then there would be me kind of looking for, like, a off moment. And, you know, a lot of these photos, they got published on, like, AP's, like, Wire, but a lot of them I don't know where a lot of them ran, but they were kind of, like, just weirder, like, you know, artier takes on like whatever the event was.
And then J+L Books published your first book, Shut Up Truth, in 2002.
Yeah.
And I love that book. I'm kind of obsessed with it. For those of you who don't know, it's really weird. And that's what I love about it. There's no text until the very end. And so you're flipping through this book of photos of this kind of weird guy in nondescriptness. I mean, it's just... Yeah,
it's super minimal. There's not a lot of information there. It's like a lot of photos of this one person, yeah.
Right, and at the end, there's a letter from that person to you, which is... It confirms the weirdness of the whole book.
So, yeah.
And so was that was someone that you met in El Paso, right?
Yeah. So I met him. His name's James Holloway, and when I was
James, if you're listening, I'm not. Yeah. I think you're amazing. The book is
I just
so
saw
great.
him. He was just in LA a couple weeks ago, and we hung out. Actually, last week. But when I was living in El Paso that first time. After college, I took a job on a Bruce Willis movie that was being shot in the desert. It was called Last Man Standing. It's pretty much like straight to video, but Walter Hill...
That wasn't your fault.
Wasn't my fault. But it was Walter Hill, the guy that directed the Warriors, was directing it, and Bruce Willis was in it, and Christopher Walken. Anyway, it was being shot out in the desert, and it was still... James had just moved to El Paso. He was a union projectionist, and so he was projecting the dailies for the movie. And I had just moved to El Paso, so we became friends. And after the movie left, we started to hang out. And then I didn't. After I left El Paso, I didn't really go back until 2000. And when I went back, I started a bunch of other projects. And Shut Up Truth was based around just photographing James more or less, and like our friendship and like whatever we were doing together. And so that's how that book came about.
And is he older than you?
Yeah, he's like, I don't know, he's probably like 20 years older than me.
Yeah, I mean, it
Maybe
just is
more. Yeah.
It doesn't, I mean, when you say like pictures of us hanging out or what, I mean, that makes it sound like, frat brother,
going
just
to a bar or whatever,
right.
Yeah.
No, and it's definitely not.
Yeah.
But it's awesome, and the cover is great. And so, how did you connect with J+L Books? So you had been making that work as kind of part of a bunch of things you're working on.
Yeah. Well, I was doing at that point I'd kind of transitioned from like doing a lot of like AP assignment work, and then started working for the Village Voice and shooting more like bands and portraits, and that kind of like segued into magazine work. And Leanne Shapton, who's the L in J+L Books, was like an art intern at Harper's Magazine at the time. It was like the only magazine I ever wanted to work for. Like, I don't know why, but I'd kind of set my sights on newspaper work, and I was just kind of gradually like thinking about magazine work, and I was reading Harper's a lot at the time, and I dropped my book off there, and they gave me this like amazing job, like one of my first big like travel jobs. It ended up being like a 20-page story, and Leanne was like, "Oh, you got to meet my friend Jason Fulford," and I think I sent him a postcard or something, and we talked on the phone a couple times, and gradually became friends. And then this was around that time, around 2000, and then I just showed him that work one day. I was like, "This is what I'm doing." He's like, and he was kind of just starting J+L at the time, and so it was one of the first J+L books, one of the first 3, I think.
That's great. And you did one other book with J+L, or that was?
Yeah, I've done one other book with them called The Plan in 2009, and then we're working on another book.
You had a book in between though.
With J+L?
No.
Oh, okay.
The week, you're like, did I?
Oh, yeah.
The Week of No Computer?
Yeah, The Week of No Computer. And
that sounds...
Yeah, have you seen that?
No.
Oh, I gotta show it to you. It was, but with J+L, we're doing another book next year, too.
You are?
Yeah.
Can you say what it's gonna be?
It is...
Is it gonna be breaking news?
I don't know if it's breaking news. I mean...
Come on, give me something.
It's, it doesn't really have a title right now, but it's kind of based around the idea of competitive memorization, like people who memorize things competitively.
Really?
Yeah, but that's one part of it. And for a year now at least, I've been calling it the Memory Project, but it's not accurate.
That makes you think of something different, I think.
Yeah, and I think all the connotations with memory and photography. This is actual literal memory. It's
right.
There's nothing ethereal or trying to
evoke
connect with some memory.
Right.
This is about actual thought. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I'm really excited about it, and
you have to talk in the microphone.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
These are the directions we don't have to give the people on the phone. Okay, so let's jump to, go back. The Week of No Computer was 2008. So there were 6 years between Shut Up Truth and the next book, which was that. And that was with a different publisher, TV Books. How did that?
Yeah, it's Tiny Vice's, Tim Barber's project. And there was also, I did a book with Wilco in between them, but,
Did you? How did that happen? Wilco's big here in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean they're a pretty respectable band.
Totally.
I had actually, that came out of Shut Up Truth more or less. I'd shown that book to an art director that I just met. I had photographed his wife for her author photo for some commercial job, and she's like, "You should meet my husband." And yeah, I gave him that book and showed him my portfolio, and he called me a week later and was like, we just kind of pitched this book to Wilco. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know if it's going to be a book, whatever. But we're going up to Connecticut to shoot them, or to meet with them. They're gonna, do you want to come? And I said yes, and then it became this 2-year project.
Did you shoot them while they were touring or performing?
Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. It was recording, touring. They were just in between Yankee Hotel Foxtrot and A Ghost Is Born. And so there was some touring and then the making of that record. And then I ended up shooting that album cover, A Ghost Is Born. And it won a Grammy Award for Best Album Packaging. And
so awesome.
Yeah, it was that whole experience.
I'm
was
even
really great.
more impressed by you than I was yesterday.
I should have sent my bio.
I know, gosh. And then, so were you already shooting a lot of music stuff, or that kind of what started that trajectory?
Yeah, I was shooting a little bit of it, but that definitely that made it more I do a lot of music work, so that was kind of pushed me more into that realm.
And then the hip hop book.
Yeah.
Was that a project that you were, how did that happen? I mean, so I picked up Michael from the airport yesterday, and he's giving me directions all over Atlanta. I mean, it's not like you were here once or twice. I mean, we drove up to the Varsity and you gave your order without skipping a beat, no menu required. So what, how often were you in Atlanta? Were you in Atlanta for something else and started shooting that, or how did it happen?
Well, I'd always gotten work down here, like, especially hip-hop stuff. There was always jobs down here.
For magazines?
Yeah, for magazines. And then a friend of mine moved down here to work for Adult Swim, and he and I he used to be a writer, and we had worked on some stories together. And there's like a series of books called 33 1/3. They're each about an album. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're like this publisher, Continuum, puts them out, and they'll just do like extended pieces of music journalism on like the Smiths, Meat is Murder, or like Exile on Main Street, and it's always kind of a personal take or like a making of kind of book. And I pitched with my friend Nick, we pitched a photo book, like a black and white tiny little photo book, and it was going to be on Outkast's record, Aquemini. It was like 97 record, and that's kind of how that whole project started. And then pretty much like from the minute I got down here to start the project, I realized like there's something way bigger going on, because Atlanta was like right in the middle of like a big like I don't know, just kind of like Soulja Boy was exploding, and there was just like everything was like the internet was kind of starting to become a big part of hip hop culture, and MySpace and people getting out music that way, and there was just a lot going on, and it turned out to be like a really great period for music in Atlanta, and so then like 2007, 2008, 2009, I spent a lot of time down here. Like I would have like month-long trips, and then in 2009 I stayed like 3 months in a row, and that was pretty much the bulk of it.
And that's when you perfected your Varsity order?
Yeah, Varsity and Ria's Bluebird and Matthews Cafeteria and Tucker. There's a lot of good food out here.
Wow. So I think it was Bill Bowling that connected us, who I'm not sure I think you know Bill through Jason Fulford.
Yeah.
And Bill is a great friend of mine, also my Zen master, and publisher of Fall Line Books here out of Atlanta. And so he first connected us, and I had the Atlanta book, and I was going to New York, and I emailed you to see if we could get together, and you said sure. And so we met at that
Balthazar?
Yes, yes.
Kind of like the Varsity.
Right, to get a drink. And I felt like it went well, but you're pretty quiet, and I'm not, especially when in a situation like that, I don't do silence very well, you know, with a new person. So I was like, Rah! And, we had talked about showing the Atlanta work in Atlanta because you hadn't shown it here. And you were like kind of on the fence, but I was like, I think it went well, but I may have scared him too. Like I wasn't sure. It could have, I left thinking it went either way. Either like, yeah, that was great, or like, okay, he's like horrified. And then I didn't hear from you for like a year. And I emailed, and like 6 months later you would email back, and I was like, it's true, I scared him. And but we did have this really weird thing happen where do you remember that woman who she was sitting at the table kind of in the corner, sure, and the waiter like chucked by accident.
Yeah,
I
you
think
like tripped and like threw the glass at her. It was like
right.
Yeah.
And
full of water.
Full of water, forcefully, so that it splattered like up on the wall behind her and the window.
It's like something, if you were really trying to throw a glass of water at somebody, that's what it looked like. It was amazing.
And she did not take it well. She freaked out.
Yeah.
So that was incredible. But so anyway, we had talked about maybe showing the work here last year for ACP, and you totally spaced and ignored me. And then I found out that we were both going to be going to Li Shui, China, on this trip last fall. And I found out at the last minute you were going. I had no idea. And I was like, I'm going to make best friends with Michael Schmelling on this trip. I may be scared him before, but I'll ease into it this time. We have a full week. It'll be totally fine. And it worked out. And then I made you sign this weird handwritten contract in my notebook. And I think I have a picture of it. So while I look for it, because it was pretty amazing. So tell me more about the book. So you finished, and did you approach Chronicle or?
Yeah, actually, they, I have a commercial rep in LA, and she had worked with Chronicle on a couple of books, one on Elliott Smith and another on like Devendra Banhart and his crew, and she'd always told me that the Chronicle kind of informally used like the Wilco book as a good model of like a good music book, something that like has an audience, like will sell, and like size and like price point, and just the way that book was set up, and that like the door was kind of always open to pitch to them, so when I was kind of getting all the work together from this 33 1/3 thing, it was kind of, I don't know, I put like a dummy together and it looked really good, but I just felt like, we should just try to do something bigger with this. So I showed all that work to Chronicle and kind of, wrote like a big pitch, like treatment, what the book would be, the scope of it, and they were into it, which was really great.
All right, so I found this.
Yeah.
So I wrote, I think we were sitting in that meeting, abysmal meeting about,
I remember.
Too many cooks in the kitchen was what that meeting was about. But I wrote, Michael Schmelling, I want to show the Atlanta work at Jennifer Schwartz Gallery and promise not to flake, knowing that although this notebook signature is no binding contract, it will really piss Jennifer off. And then I wrote,
I thought about flaking.
I know. And then you remembered, right? And then you signed it, and then there was a thing for the date. But you added that you wanted it to be in October during ACP, and you wanted an AM 1690 show, which
you came through with.
I totally did, because I don't flake. And then you wrote with an asterisk, if I do flake, it will be with good reason. And I wrote, better be a fucking good reason with 6+ months notice. Yeah. And here we are.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
I'm a man of my word.
Of your, binding contracts. So do you feel like your commercial work so many of the things that you said have been the opportunities you've gotten that a lot of people, in the fine art realm for your work have been through connections that you had from your commercial work. Yeah. Has that been... I feel like a lot of fine art photographers are out there with work and wanting to pitch books and not really having that access. Or, if I had a body of work and I went to a portfolio review, I have 20 minutes to sit down with a publisher and hope that they like it, whereas you're working more off of a relationship.
Yeah.
Was that you're like, yes?
Is that a question? Yeah. No.
Yes. True.
Yeah, I think I guess like just working as a photographer has always been really important to me, and I love the fine art photo world. I just never had both feet in it, and I think I probably had maybe a foot and a half in the commercial world, and so in some ways I've tried to tie those two things together or make those things work. But it would be nice to have like more I guess just more work in the fine art world too. Like it would be great to like have like total balance there. Just I think it just leaned more towards commercial work for me because I like working as a photographer.
And it's definitely more lucrative.
Yeah, unless you're like the 1% or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could be you.
Yeah.
Your work is so good.
No, thanks. But yeah, it's I like showing in galleries when I've done it. I've had a couple shows over the years, but just like 3 or 4 really. That's about it.
The hip hop work, how much did you know about that music and that culture? I mean, what I love about it is the introduction is really smart. And because hip hop is not I have no real knowledge of it. But to read the introduction by
Kelfasene.
It's written in a way that it's not dumbed down at all, but it's also a really great explanation of the scene and the culture around hip hop in Atlanta, which I think is a really hard thing to do, to really fully describe it without making someone who already knows a lot about it feel like it's elementary.
Yeah, I mean, that's all okay. I mean, he's just a great writer, and that was kind of that was the idea all along, was that this was going to be, sort of a commercial book, more along the lines of the Wilco Book, and that some explanation was needed, and you don't want to alienate people. There's know everything about hip hop, so it's kind of.
So did you know a lot going in, or do you feel like you learned a lot through the project?
I knew some, but you really have to be down here to really get into it. There's just a lot of stuff going on here, like at the last minute, or behind closed doors, or just it's really like the fabric of the city, and you have to, you just really have to be down here to really get into it. So I didn't, there's a lot of things I didn't know about that end up being in the book, like all the whole teen party scene that's big here, and just kind of like the infrastructure of hip hop, really, the way that the city is set up. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's like I live here, but it doesn't, have any connection to my life.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. I mean, it really is a hugely separate and rich thing that's happening. Were you first able to get access to some of the musicians through the commercial work? And then
Yeah, it definitely helped. To show that work, and there were and there's a handful of pictures in the book that were shot for. There was something in there that I shot for Spin years ago, and something for the Fader, and so and
what about the green guy that's going over the wall?
Oh yeah, that was just like
I love that.
Oh, thanks. I hope that's in the show. I think that's in the show tomorrow.
We'll see.
Soon as I gotta unwrap it. Yeah, that was actually that was just from kind of just looking online a lot and seeing what was kind of bubbling up, and I found a mixtape by these guys called Travis Porter. It's 3 guys, and I think it was their first mixtape, and I wrote them, and I basically just said if you need any types, if you need any photography of any kind, give me a call, and I probably sent them my website, I'm sure, or some JPEGs, and then their manager wrote me and was like, we're doing a mixtape, we need a cover tomorrow, and that's the kind of thing that there's no way you can do, calling from New York to try to set up some portrait shoot. So it's those kind of things that were great. So that was an outtake from their mixtape cover, and then a year and a half or 2 years later, they ended up getting signed to Jive, and I think they have their record just came out recently.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so it's that kind of stuff that you see, there's all this stuff that happens down here that's so regional, but then it kind of piece by piece makes it out up north, of course T.I. or T-Pain or some of the bigger people everybody knows, but then there's all this other stuff that's happening down here that is kind of just slowly leaking out into the internet and everywhere else.
And then so your next project is about professional memorizers?
Yeah, more sort of, yeah.
I mean, that seems unrelated. You know, how in the world? It's fascinating. People do this?
Yeah. Well, I actually started the project when I was working on the Atlanta book, and I kind of put it aside for a while. And there's people that do. I mean, it's pretty common.
It's like
I don't know, common, but
version of a spelling bee.
Yeah, more or less. Except kids participate too. But yeah, adults always win pretty much. But but yeah, it's there's different tasks. Like you get like a deck of cards that's all mixed up, say, and then you have 15 minutes to memorize the order of it, and then time is up. They give you like a brand new deck of cards that's unwrapped. You unwrap it, and you have like another 15 minutes to put it back in the order of the one you memorized, and then a lot of people can do it. Something like that isn't like the hardest one, so a lot of people finish, but it's just like a time thing. So some people do it very quickly. I can't do it at all, but and then there's memorizing numbers and poems, but it's like there's an old Greek method, like the way that like the Homer recited things, and like that whole oral tradition was done by this like method of memorization. So it's like the basic method of it is really simple.
If your brain works that way.
Well, everyone's does, yeah. I mean, you can do it. It's like everybody. It's like it's called the loci method or the Roman room. There's different names for it. This Joshua Foer, Jonathan Safran Foer's brother, wrote a book. He was a journalist, and he decided he was going to participate in the competition, and then he ended up either winning or coming in second. I can't remember, but he wrote a book. It just came out like last year, maybe.
Do you know them?
No, I don't know them, but it's like you basically in your mind, like the mind works better when a word is associated or something is associated with an image. So like the whole idea is that like you're pairing things in your mind with, like, if I'm trying to remember the name Jennifer, like I don't know, I think like watch or something, and then I pair those things
Obviously.
together. Yeah,
right.
Whatever it is, But a lot of people do it so it's like you're in your house and you picture a house, and then you associate all these objects with these things. So like Ace of Spades is like a framed picture of my mother. Like I'm going around a room.
Right.
And but the really good people like can do that like in triplicate, or can double up things so they can remember 4 numbers at a time, or something like that.
Right.
It's really interesting, but that's only part of the book. So.
Oh my gosh. And then to think about how you would represent that sort of photographically. It's an interesting.
It's very minimal. It's like they're like portraits.
Yeah.
It's like a book. It's like a book of portraits.
Must be a certain type of person. Is it a spelling bee type person that? Do you know what I mean? Like a little quirky.
Yeah, it's a little nerdier, but there's all sorts of people. It seems to skew towards like, I don't know, more business oriented people, and there's a lot of memory seminars that you hear advertised to businessmen, like memorize people's names, like have like a better like social experience, like remembering people's names and coming off like sharper, and it's definitely good for your mind. So there's a little bit of that, and then there's like high school kids that are just kind of doing it, for fun, and yeah, but it's a big international thing. Like eventually the USA, I've been to the USA Memory Championships twice, and then those people go to like a world championship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you gonna go?
I've never been to the world one.
You totally have to.
Maybe I will. Yeah, maybe I will, and bring the book.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Well, is there anything else you think, for anyone that is, I think what has always been really striking for me is that a lot of people, I think, when they make work or they think about a book, they maybe are approaching it from a different perspective. And I think what's really interesting about your books, especially like Shut Up Truth and this new one that you're talking about, I mean, they are quirky and not what you maybe would think of as, I'm a fine art photographer and I'm going to start my career with this book, and it's about this guy in El Paso just hanging out with no text and a kind of bizarre letter at the end. I mean, it really is a very unique tone and feeling, and it's risky. I think it's riskier than putting together, I say, rainbows and unicorns and like, this makes a great book. So did you actively feel like you were doing it that way? Or do you feel like you were able, that you can sort of be a little edgier or riskier with the kind of work that you're putting out because your bread and butter is on the commercial side and one helps the other? Or I'm just talking.
Yeah, I don't, I think maybe it's the opposite. Like, I feel like I think I've had a lot of fun doing commercial work because I don't I always, I don't know, I tend to follow, like, I guess Shut Up Truth or these other things. They're really just, like, what I'm interested in. So it comes from a really honest place, and there's no, like, attempt to build a project just to have a project.
Right.
And so that, in turn, I think has really helped me commercially. I mean, not in terms of, like, getting work, but just mentally, I think, because I feel like some of the things that might be a drag, like, in the commercial world, like, maybe, I don't want to say don't bother me, but maybe they don't bother me as much, like, because I don't know, I've always got, like, something else that I know that I really love that, you know, that I can work on, and like, that's the stuff that's, you know, just as important as the work that I'm doing commercially. And I don't know, for me, it's just really been about, like, balancing those things. And, you know, I think, I don't know, like, at the time, I mean, I don't know what the audience for Shut Up Truth was. I mean, I don't know if there is, you know, to this day, but I think, like, you know, I think that's really important, just to kind of follow what I'm interested in. And that's, like, that's always been the best rule.
What's worked for you?
So far, yeah.
So far, so good. Fingers crossed. Well, thank you for coming in. Thanks for being my first live recorder.
My pleasure. It was fun.
Or whatever.
Yeah.